Good morning. Dennis O'Neill again, and today I have the pleasure of speaking to one of the grand dames of Westborough, Dorothy Zwicker. And Dorothy, you are currently how old?
100.
100 round number years old. Doesn't she look marvelous? And not only that, she's as sharp as a tack, so I have to be on my best behavior today. So now we're going to jump in the Wayback Machine, and we're going to go back to the early years. Now I understand that you originally were from Canada.
That's right.
Whereabouts in Canada?
In Nova Scotia.
Okay.
And came from a farm, and we arrived here in 1925. I was only about 8 years old.
Okay, just a wee lass.
And
how big was your family?
just my brother and I.
Okay.
And so,
And do you know why your parents chose to come?
well, it was farm life down there, and my mother had been over here when she was younger, and she rather liked this type of life.
Neck of the woods?
And so anyway, they sold the farm and came over here, and eventually my father built a house in Auburn,
Okay.
and that was in 1928.
Did you have relatives in the area when they came down here?
No.
Not particularly.
Just-
Sometimes
no.
family influence.
But a lot of Nova Scotians were coming over here at this time, so there was lots of friends
Okay.
that usually gathered in Auburn. They came, a lot of them settled in Boston area.
Okay.
So they were happy to get up in the more of a like country life.
So you had a good clan connection
Yes,
that
yes,
made the transition
yeah.
easier.
And so
Oh.
anyway, I married in 1938,
All right.
and he was a Nova Scotian.
Okay. Kept it in the family, kind of.
Kept
And,
it in the family.
what were you called? What were the Nova Scotians called when they came down here?
Well,
Did they have a nickname, a pleasant nickname we can say in front of the audience?
oh no, they used to call us heron chokers.
Heron chokers.
They
Interesting.
that was they used to have a Bangs Falls. It was, and horse and buggy days. They were all headed for Bangs Falls
Okay.
when the heron was running, and everybody would go to get their share of heron fish.
Okay. Well, that's probably still popular to this day. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never participated in a heron run, but I have seen them and heard about them, so I've seen them on the news.
So
So.
they always called us heron chokers.
Okay. Well, that makes
we-
sense.
just fun.
So,
And
originally he built a house. Your father built a house in Auburn.
yes,
When did you come to Westborough?
in 1938, the very end of 1938.
Okay.
Yes.
Right after the hurricane of 38?
Right after the
Ah,
hurricane.
so.
Yeah, our honeymoon money went in to repair roofs on the barn and the chicken
okay.
coop and anything else that happened.
There you go. Yeah, I was going to say there wasn't much government assistance to
No,
go around if a
no.
natural disaster happened in those days.
No,
And,
I mean everybody fended for themselves.
Yeah.
I'm having some
As-
trouble with the connection. Please try again in a moment. Sorry, I'm having trouble with the connection. Please try
going
again
on?
in a moment.
Somebody's had his phone. Whoops. A little technical delay.
His phone. It's very bad when the cameraman does it.
Yeah, that's right. We'll give him
Sorry
demerits.
about that.
So,
I'm like, what's that?
yeah, of course, I wasn't here for the hurricane of '38. I missed that one, and I'm not sorry I did. But I understand the roof on the Congregational Church toppled during the hurricane. I remember
Yes,
stories
there's
about
something
that
about the steeple and
at
everything.
that point. So when you moved to Westborough, did you move to this farm?
Moved to this farm. My husband had bought it in 1935, and it was kind of run down because
Mm-hmm.
who we bought it from was, old. And
Well, it was also not necessarily the height of the Depression, but we were deep in the Depression at that point. And
That's right.
you guys got here just in time to enjoy the Depression. So, do you have any recollections of the Depression, what it was
Well,
like
I hear-
living in the Depression?
I heard people that, had a hard time in depression, but I don't know. My family they worked, both of my mother and father worked when they came over here. And I said, I can't remember going without.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we had the necessary things
Right.
to live with.
And farm life
And
encourages that
yeah,
self-sufficiency.
That's right.
So that,
And we were just in a little suburb of, Auburn. And but my father had a nice backyard, and he had a few little chickens. Raised our own eggs.
Yeah.
Had our own eggs.
Yeah.
And he planted a garden, and so I mean we lived good. We
Right.
didn't,
well, life was simpler then.
They were simpler
And
then.
I think back to my childhood, we weren't smart enough to know we were poor because we had enough to get by.
Well,
That's
that
all
yeah,
important.
and
Yeah,
The
we
important
didn't
things.
need everything else, and we made our own fun, and somehow it worked out pretty good.
Well, that's-
So that at that point. So, where did you meet the love of your life?
well, that's another big story.
Well, good. I want to hear it.
all the Nova Scotians got together in March because there was so many of them had March birthdays.
Oh,
And they used to come to my mother's house first. And after a while, the house got too small for that crowd. So we hired the Legion Hall in
okay.
Auburn.
Yeah.
And they'd have old-fashioned dances and all kinds of stuff like that. And so one time somebody knew a couple in Grafton, and they said so-and-so was from Nova Scotia too. Well, go get them. So my brother went down, picked them up, and brought them up, and my husband happened to be there visiting that night,
Okay.
and he was from Nova Scotia. So
He came along for the
that's how
ride,
that's how I met.
and you swept him off his feet.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, I bet.
Well, he was living alone here, and he had bought a few animals and things like that, so he had to take care of it, and he'd take care of them, and so forth. And eventually he got a job down at the Bay State,
Oh, yes.
and
The company store.
So, yeah. So he.
Now, did you have a car back then, or did he have to walk to work down at Bay State?
No, he had a little old Chevy, a little box type Chevy.
But, yeah. And,
And I think it was a 31 Chevy.
a used.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
huge one.
And, probably paid $200 for it. And,
Maybe. And that was a lot of money at that time.
yeah. Well, a little money went a lot further
Yeah,
back then
yes,
too.
yes,
So that
yes.
at that point.
Yes.
So when you first moved into the house here, after you got married and you were all in love on cloud nine, what were the living conditions like? Did you have running water and inside plumbing and electricity?
My husband had been doing a lot of repair from the time he bought it, and he was waiting for spring to come to connect the water, to dig from the well to the cellar,
Yeah.
to connect up the water. And so, we had a pump in the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
and an old hand pump.
An exercise machine.
Yeah, that was an exercise machine.
Yeah, kept you fit.
Yeah,
So,
and oh yes, but I mean, he had to put the electricity in the house,
okay.
and he and his neighbor went together and had the electricity put in the house, and I think it cost $6 a month, whether you use the electricity
or
or
not.
not.
Outrageous.
Yeah.
That was down the street, too. They
Oh,
had-
and they had to run the wires
Oh,
down
they
the
had to
street.
pay.
They had to
Yeah.
run the
They had to
wires
pay
all
for
down the
electricity
street
on the
too.
street.
So,
And it was
But-
an old dirt road,
mhm.
and finally it got tarred, and finally it got a hard top, and
Yeah, just like a real road.
but I mean that took years to do it too. It wasn't done all in a minute.
Well, it must have been quite an improvement to get electricity.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
we've become very accustomed to
Yes.
that now.
And the one main thing is that he gathered up all the lamps, and I heard that they were beautiful old
Yeah.
kerosene lamps. All went to the dump.
Oh, yeah. Don't you wish you had them now? You'd have a
Yes.
fortune in your hands.
Yes.
That the Antique Roadshow would be coming up here to look at your lamps. So, but that said, and not undifferent from today, when new cycles come in, and all of a sudden, what was perfectly good is obsolete, and you
Yeah,
can't
that's right.
figure out how to use it anymore. So that and I think the craftsmanship back then, the quality of the items that were made, were really much superior in a lot of ways to the plastic stuff we get now, and in a variety of colors, but it's not as well made as that.
And then another thing, there was just a cellar under this end of the house,
Mm-hmm.
and no cellar under the dining room, and there was an old kitchen, a pantry, and a shed on the back of the house and whatnot. All that came off,
Okay.
and my husband made a tractor out of an old car. And
The
they dug-
mother of invention.
And they dug a
Okay.
cellar
Okay.
underneath those rooms.
With his car tractor.
And,
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I bet it wasn't as easy as it sounds now, 50
and my
years
father
later.
worked with him. My father was a carpenter.
Okay.
So and
He would come out from Auburn
yeah,
to help.
That, yeah,
So
that
it,
helped a lot.
Oh, absolutely. It's always nice to know what you're doing when you
Yes.
when you get involved in one of those
he wasn't
adventures.
a carpenter, but I mean
Well-
my husband. But he said he learned a lot from my father.
But everybody was more hands-on and industrious back
That's
then
right.
because there wasn't,
Yeah.
you pick up the phone and you
Yeah.
call somebody down the street. You had no money to call them anyhow,
no.
and you had to make do and learn. So
Yeah.
were you out there pounding nails and climbing ladders?
No, I was climbing through windows and things like that to try to get to a little place we kept for an easy place. And,
Okay.
and I had a little square left of the old kitchen that had everything in it, the sink and the stove and refrigerator, and I had a little square to work around it.
A safety refuge that you could stand in
so
and make miracles.
They left like a doorway for me that was going to be a window.
Mhm.
But after a while, that window had to be framed in, and I had to step over that window to get to
Didn't
the
get
dining
easier.
area where we
Yeah,
ate.
yeah. Again, kept you limber and kept you in fighting
Oh, yeah.
spirits.
It,
So
was,
that,
it was fun. I couldn't do it today,
well,
though.
I was going to say, but it was probably more fun like being in the Army, looking
Yeah.
back on it than going through it at the
Yeah.
time. And, there might
I
have been a
didn't
couple of
mind.
days.
I was young, so I didn't mind.
Well, but you could see the future. This
Yeah.
is an improvement. This is coming,
oh,
and I
it was
wanted
a big improvement.
it. So worth
Yes.
worth the wait and the hassle.
Yeah,
So your husband went to work at Bay State.
yes.
And you farmed nights and weekends, or were you taking care of the vegetables and the chickens, or did you work out
no,
of the
he
house?
planted the garden, but I did. Yeah, I used to like to gather the vine. I told him when I came here, I said I was drawing a line at the back door. I wasn't going out in the hayfield
Yeah,
and this. But after a while, I said I went because I wanted to go.
Okay.
I'd rake after the hay wagon.
yeah.
But
It looked like so much fun
yeah.
you couldn't stay away.
oh,
Yeah.
that I went, And then I had so many friends in Auburn that came down
Mhm.
and was happy to be on the farm. They'd come down haying time
Oh.
too. And
Well, that's,
we'd ride on the back of the hay
there's a
wagon.
certain magic about that. I mean, when we were kids growing up, my uncle's farm, the Harveys, downtown, as soon as you saw the tractor out in the field, every kid in the neighborhood rushed over there to be part of it. I don't know how they put up with us, but but it was magic. It was fun and good, clean living. So now let's talk about your family. You had children.
I had children. My first son was, my son was born 40, and this one was 42.
This one is Ruth. It's sitting in the
This is
corner
Ruth,
prompting us,
yes.
so we won't show her, but we'll give her credit for participation. She didn't put on her party dress like Mom did, which is a beautiful. I love the colors in your dress. It really is bright and vibrant, just like you. So that.
Out to the doctor's yesterday, so that's why that was out.
Oh, it's your doctor suit.
No, I mean, we had to dig it out of the
Oh,
closet.
dust it off and get ready to go. So your daughter was then born. Any other children?
And then I had a Gail that lives in Florida now.
Okay.
And
So that kept you busy.
that kept me busy.
Yeah, I bet.
Mhm.
That, and they all attended
Yeah.
the local schools.
Yes, they are.
And
And my son, when he started high school, but he was more of a hands-on person, so he finally got a chance to go to boys' trade school.
oh,
We tried to get him
Yeah, oh.
in, but we didn't get Ed try soon enough.
Yeah.
So we
that was up in Worcester.
Yes.
Okay.
But he finally got in after a month or so. So that was
But that's excellent. I mean, and even today, you like to see the opportunity for those that are hands-on, mechanically minded, that have interests in other pursuits to be, and I think we're running out of tradesmen. You know, we need to train more. So it was wonderful that he had the opportunity. Now, did the district pay for him to go to school, or did you have to pay out of pocket for him to go to Worcester?
Oh, they paid for it.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure how it would have worked back then.
I don't know how. They had to drive themselves there.
Yeah, you provided your own
So I
transportation.
don't know if they reimbursed a little bit
Hmm.
for that. I don't know that.
Well, that-
I don't believe we
Okay.
paid it. That's
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, I'll believe whatever you tell me.
No, no. I mean, I don't believe one way or the other.
Okay.
I can't remember.
So she's pleading the fifth on that one. So that.
But I thought it could give you an interesting thing about when my son was born. He was born in February, and it was just after Valentine's Day, and it was a blizzard.
Okay.
We snowed in, and it was time to go to the hospital. And my husband had a horse, and Mr. Thorpe up at the end of the road had a horse. So I guess he must have trudged up there in the snow to get that horse.
Yeah.
And I don't think Clifford came, but yes, I guess he did. Clifford did have to come and team the horses
Helped to
out,
hitch 'em up.
drag our car
Wow.
down the driveway, up the road, and when you come to the end of the road, it was all banked in.
Right.
But we didn't get to the end of the road, but there was, it's a parking lot now for
Oh, the ball field.
Yeah.
Yes, down.
So that was just a field, and we branched off. The snow had blown some partly
Yeah.
off of that,
Okay.
and we had to go through diagonally across to get to the main road to go downtown. Then we could go. It was plowed.
That is an interesting visual of the
Yeah.
horses pulling the car
Yeah.
in order to get to
Yeah.
the street. So that,
So that-
but
I thought that
you made
was
it all right.
We made it all right. Yeah,
Oh, well,
we
that's
made
good.
it all right.
No taxi
We
cab
did,
delivery
no.
in the back seat.
No, no.
That would have been exciting. So this was in 1940.
That
Is
was
that when
1940. Yeah, 1940.
your son was born?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, that's just the beginning of the war years. So what
Yeah.
are your memories of living through the war and rationing and, you know, those
Yeah.
types of issues?
Well, we did have rationing, but as I said, we made out with whatever we got.
Okay.
And
Because
of course
again-
we had the animals, we could have our own milk and butter and
Yeah.
so forth.
So the basic necessities were
Yeah.
self-contained.
yeah,
And so again, that's a gift that I think we've lost over time. That we think we're so smart we can go to the grocery store and
Yeah.
buy anything from, you know, Chile or from Japan or whatever. But we used to be self-sufficient,
That's
and
right.
a crisis wasn't as bad because we could take care of
well,
ourselves.
I don't think it was bad when you're living on a farm. Maybe when you live in the city, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
no, I mean, as I say, in any of these crises, we never felt as if we were doing without. We had plenty to eat. And
Well, that's important in my book. I like
Yeah.
to eat so, on a regular basis. So you had 3 kids, and at some point the road was paved. How did they get to school? Did the school bus come out
yeah,
here?
the children had to walk out to the end of the street.
Down to the corner, the
Yeah.
Upton Road?
Mhm.
Was it called the Upton Road back then?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
But,
And but today the bus goes right through the street and picks the children up. I guess it isn't safe for them to walk out the road.
yeah, again, that's something that's changed. You used to walk if you lived within a mile of the school, and now they pick up everybody in town. We used to walk home for lunch because we lived downtown, and didn't think anything. I liked having the hour off, and we used to fool around coming and going. So it was like a big recess time. So interesting. So, how long did your husband work at Bay State?
37 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what part of Bay State did he work in? Do you
And the
remember?
grinding wheels,
Okay.
Craven.
Yeah. the Cravens and
T&B, was it the T&B he worked?
yeah,
T&B, I think.
yeah.
It was quite the operation,
Yeah.
and certainly it was a big economic influence to Westborough.
It
as
was.
So many of the people lived there, and many could walk, and they paid a living wage
Yes.
so that you could
Yes,
own a car and feed your family. And
Albert
so-
always praised the owners, and
Mhm.
but he said it wasn't the same Bay State after they sold it.
Oh, probably not an uncommon
No.
issue
Yeah.
with a lot of companies that
Yeah.
have been sold to investors and so forth. That so he probably knew my father because my father
without
worked.
the name is very familiar.
Greg O'Neill, because he
Yeah.
worked at Bay State
Oh,
through the
yes.
war. Worked on the big press.
My father was on the one that he ground the wheels
Right.
to get them to the tolerance.
Smoothed
that
them
they-
out. Yeah.
The hard wheels.
But,
He worked in that.
And I'm amazed they were ever able to clean up all of the dump pits out behind there. That if it was, and I don't want to know what's under there at this point. But it was, again, it was certainly a big economic engine for whether you had skills or not, there was a job available, and the guys could work and make a living. So it did smell a little from time to time when the wind blew just right, when they were baking off some of the stuff. But it was a good deal. So after the kids went to school, you took care of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any interaction with the school? Teacher-parent conversations? Were
We
you?
went when they had open house.
Okay.
To, that, but otherwise, why? You'd have to get a taxi or something to
Mhm.
get downtown and whatnot. And when you're on the farm, there's always something to do.
You didn't lack for your own
That's
entertainment,
That's
so
right.
that at that point. After the war, the troops came home. The boom was on. Westborough started to change.
Mm.
That you had. Who else is farms out here? Ellis Farm
Yeah, chickens.
had their chickens out here.
Yeah.
And, oh yeah, Zaretti's on the other side of town, but the apple orchard was up here. and
Mary.
Parker's. Yeah, and Apple Mary's. Did you know Apple Mary? You must have known Apple Mary.
No.
She was an interesting
Yes.
character. That, of course, she was about 108 when I was a kid, or it seemed like it. But she had a little trout pond out there, and you could go out and fish and catch a fish and pay for it, fresh out of the pond.
You mentioned the Ellis farm. My son went up and worked on the farm with the chickens and hens. He said he'd come home night and all he could hear was the chickens and hens squawking.
Yeah, I suspect that could have been irritating at times.
And he
but,
was only young, maybe 14 or something,
yeah.
before he turned of age. And Harold Thompson, Harold, the gas station.
the gas
down
station.
here, and he knew Lawrence. And he knew Lawrence loved to tinker around with old cars.
Okay.
He'd buy an old car. We always saved their money, put it in the bank from the babies up. And he spent his money when he got a little older because you'd always see an engine hanging in a tree somewhere
Hanging out of the tree.
or something. He was always tinkering with the car.
Kind of like a bird feeder, but a little bigger.
Yeah, and he was, when he went to trade school, he was going to take up
Auto mechanics.
what?
Auto mechanics.
Auto mechanic.
Yes.
And the dean that was talking to him said, he said, I think you know all about that. Why don't you take up
Machinist.
what?
Machinist.
Okay. Machinist.
Machinist.
Yes,
Yeah, a machinist.
okay.
And then he said, you can make your own tools.
But again, it was a
Yeah.
it was a time-honored occupation to be a machinist. My uncle and cousins, the Smiths, run the Westborough machine
worked
shop,
for 'em.
and oh, did he really?
Yeah.
Okay. See, again,
See?
everybody gets interconnected. You don't realize it at the time, one to another. But all the boys made a living off it, you know, and still are the ability to do that. There still is a
And
need.
he's jack of all trades, just like his father. He
Yeah.
could fix and do anything.
Yeah, and again, some of the hands, not only working at a responsible job at 14, earning your own money and learning the discipline of taking orders to a certain extent. The kids have lost that, along with, I think, you know, their thumbs may work great now, but I don't know that the rest of their hands do
They get
too
a lot of
much.
exercise.
And at this point, but I just think those are skills that were so wonderful that created a life for somebody. The
No, but I
ability
was
to be
going
able
to
to
say
do that.
Harold Thompson couldn't wait for my
To
son
get-
to get 16 so he'd come down and work at the gas
Get down to the garage, and he had a nice operation. Back in the old days, you'd pull in, they'd pump your gas, they'd clean your windshield, they'd check your oil, you know, and now you're lucky that they've got a pump open, you can pump your own for at this point. So, but speaking of cars, I understand that you became a race car driver in your later life, that you got your license.
I couldn't wait to get rid of it.
So that out of self-defense, you had.
Yeah.
How old were you when you got your license?
68.
68. What a marvel! And she's probably a better driver than all of the 16-year-olds that got
I
on the
tell
road
you
at
what,
that
I
time.
never went far, but at the time I was taking care of Ruth Terrell at night. She had help around the clock.
Right.
So I went down 5 o'clock at night and stayed until 7 in the morning.
Wow.
And
Nice. But nice to be able to do that kind of help. Ruth Terrell, again, was a wonderful
she
lady.
was a wonderful
She was,
person.
a stalwart in
wonderful.
town. And
Wonderful.
well remembered, whose memory fades as the
Yeah.
rest of us age. And but nice to be able to have people to pitch in and to be able to help and keep
So
in her home.
Quite
And
a few people came in
yeah.
there.
Yeah, my recollection is
Yeah.
everybody wanted to help her.
Yeah.
You know, that you didn't have to ask, they volunteered. And what better testament can you have for somebody? So you never went out to the Westborough Speedway with your car and drove around the track? So, just checking. Want to make sure. But,
No, I wasn't very brave about going into town or anything like that, but it got me back and forth
Yep.
from here
Did-
to
did-
Ruth Terrell's.
did what you needed to
The back
do.
roads.
Yeah, took you an hour to go through all the back roads to get downtown. You really were cautious at that point. So, how about some of the other people from town that you remember? Some of the old timers, some of the fond memories or special people that you might have remembered?
Right now, mine's a blank.
Okay, well,
Probably church.
percolate on that for a minute and let's talk. I understand that you are a stalwart member of the church.
Yes, I
And were you Methodist when you came,
no,
or did you
I was
join after?
Lutheran, but there was no,
No
Lutheran
Lutheran church at the time.
in here.
Yeah.
It came later.
Yeah.
But I was established in the
Methodist church.
and all my friends that I knew, you know,
Mhm.
went to the Methodist
Yeah.
church. So I just,
Where was the original Methodist church? I know now it's across from the country club, but
well, it was first. It was what was the Grange Hall.
oh, okay.
That was
Worked out of the Grange
yeah.
Hall or rented it or whatever.
what street was that on?
Oh,
Milk Street?
yeah, Milk
Milk
Street, right
Street?
down towards the end of Milk Street. That
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's right.
beside where the old underwear factory used to be.
And then when I came, it was on Church Street.
Hmm. Oh, where the
right up-
Masonic Lodge
yes.
is now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
now I'm connecting the
Yeah,
dots. I'm catching
yeah,
up with you.
Yeah.
So that's good. And they've got a beautiful facility now. You know, they did a nice
Lovely.
fundraising job, and it really is super. I've been to several services
Yes.
there for various
Right.
things,
You're
and
talking about another big renovation.
and add on. Well, again, this whole area, all of the churches seem to be growing,
Yeah.
which seems to be swimming upstream from a lot of the rest of the country, that where religion isn't working as well as it used to. But so you, the minister that I go back to is Ned Watts.
Yes.
So he was in the Rotary Club when I was in the Rotary Club. Nice guy. I like Ned.
He was very nice.
Yeah,
Very,
I believe he
very
was out of Rhode Island originally, or he went back to Rhode Island. But I liked his approach, and when I heard his sermons and so forth, very down to earth, and
we
draw you right
we
in.
were going to miss him when he left.
Yeah. So that, are you still able to attend church at all?
No, I don't go down now. No,
Okay. Then,
no, I have
it gets harder.
other problems that
Yeah.
keep me home. Yeah.
That,
And,
but that did you, were you one of the ubiquitous church ladies that when they had a function that
oh
you
yeah,
cooked
oh
in the
yes,
kitchen?
I
and,
belonged to the women's group, and we were very active and a nice big group. But it's just like everything else, the young people, you know,
mm-hmm.
don't come along and keep it going.
Nobody's pushing you up
Yeah,
the ladder and
that's
taking
right.
over your job,
Yes.
and
But other organizations go on in the church that kind of take over what
Mhm.
we did. But our organization is down to about four or five people now, I guess. And they try to do something, but they can't do what we
Yeah.
did years ago when you had a room full of people.
everybody pulling on their oar, doing a little bit, made it a light load,
Mm.
so that. But I bet they put on some swell suppers.
Oh, yes,
That,
yes.
They don't make
did.
food like that
No.
anymore.
And I mean, that's what we used to put a lot of suppers on in the old church on Church
Mhm.
Street. And that was, you know, a basement that was made
Yep.
over into a kitchen and a dining hall. And I mean, they had good suppers. And when we got up to church there, why, for a while, nothing happened in that nice kitchen. but
They finally figured out how to use it.
Things happened. Things happened after a while.
And, good. Oh no, that's one of the things I like about Maine is all the church suppers. They still put them on, and
Oh, yes.
almost every weekend my wife is
Shouldn't they go
deciding
somewhere?
I can't cook today. We have to go. You know, and it's a reasonable and homemade pies.
Oh,
Did you have a specialty as a cook? What did you like to cook? Were you pastry, pies, cookies, rolls,
I
bread?
baked. No, bread wasn't my specialty.
It wasn't your bag.
No, I couldn't mess with yeast.
So,
But I like to bake otherwise,
mm-hmm.
and just plain home cooking.
Mm-hmm. Were there any Nova Scotian specialty dishes, food associated with?
Well, we have what we made was cucumber salad, which they always made. Whether it came from Nova Scotia or where it came from, I don't know. But
Mm-hmm.
we always used to peel the cucumbers and press the water out of them for a full day, and maybe if we were going to have it for our big meal at supper time when the men worked, why we mix up sour cream and a little bit of sugar and salt and pepper in that, and you'd sprinkle your cucumbers and onion. You cut onion in with the
Okay.
cucumber and press that, and mix up this little cream base, and that made
You're making
a-
me hungry. Let's go make some. And,
We just did last
You just
week.
did last
we
week.
did last week.
Ah.
We made some.
I think that I don't think the remains of it came out of the refrigerator.
I don't think so. Yeah.
have to learn to cut the portion down some, so that now Nova Scotia, were they seafood? Did you have seafood from
Well,
Nova Scotia?
We weren't in a seafood
You
area,
were inland.
but there was a fish truck that came up through
Ah.
and we would get fish at least once.
Okay.
Of course, there wasn't refrigeration then when
Mhm.
I was there as a kid, but now it got put in
Yeah.
after we left eventually, and they had their electricity.
So did you have an ice box when you were first here? And an
no,
Iceman? No,
No,
you didn't. When you got
My
electricity?
husband maybe bought a second-hand something or other, washing machine, and I don't know whether he might have bought a new refrigerator because he could use that and with
Oh,
the milk
sure.
and the cream
Yeah.
and all that.
Well, and he wanted to spoil
Yeah.
his blushing bride,
Yeah.
give her nothing but the best. So that
So he tried to make it as much, but more than once he'd say, when he came to see me up in Auburn, I wish this house was on here, this land.
So,
But they made it livable.
well, no, it's a lovely property now.
Yeah.
And,
We got it modernized down here, and upstairs
Mhm.
is back in the
Oh,
1700s.
it's like a time machine when you go
Latches
upstairs.
on the
Matches.
closet
That-
doors.
But that's the charm of an old house. We bought an old house that my wife, but she didn't care how much I had to work to fix it up. She likes the old house, so it was an old farmhouse. It's downtown now. It's grown up around it, but yeah, same thing. They don't build them like they used to when it was a well-built house at the time, a
There were
prosperous house.
fireplaces in every room.
Yeah.
And
And,
Albert said they were real shallow, so they more smoke in the house.
No. I thought they used to call those like a Russian fireplace or something. They were supposed to reflect the heat further out into the room, but you needed a damn good draft in
Yeah,
order to get it to go up
yeah,
the chimney.
Yeah.
This is a fireplace in back of
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
The fireplace is all buried in this
Yeah.
place.
So the fireplaces are still up in the.
They're still there. So someday, who knows? Somebody may put them back into service. That you never can tell. And they've got a lot of modern conveniences now. You can hook into the old fireplaces or the Franklin stove. Well, they're not Franklin stoves anymore. They're all airtight. Not what Ben did. Did you ever go on a trip back to Nova Scotia to visit the
Oh,
relatives?
He came from a little different area, than I did. So, I mean, he liked to go back to see his people. I liked to go back to see my people.
Yep.
I had aunts and cousins
Mhm.
and all this and that, and uncles so yes, every year.
Oh, every year.
Every
Oh,
year when
nice.
he,
Vacation.
in August,
Yeah,
he
vacation.
Yeah,
2
the
week
joy of
vac-
working at Bay State, you got a vacation.
2-week vacation, and
Yeah.
we'd always be ready to go to Nova Scotia.
Now, did you drive up?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Didn't
Oh,
take a train
yes,
or
and-
anything. Yeah.
That was, you know, the roads weren't as nice as they are now.
Oh, yeah.
But as we progressed through the years, we had the Trans-Canada Highway.
Yep.
But before that, it was just maybe hard surface. They know how to build a road. They let the surface get good and hard before they
Final top
tap it
coat it.
over.
How long did it take you to drive to Nova Scotia back then?
Well, we start out here in the morning. We put up somewhere in New Brunswick.
Oh, you
And-
okay? You drive as far as New
And
Brunswick.
then we would get to where we were going. Shortly after dinner time or something
Okay,
like
so
that.
it's a good
Yeah.
2-day drive.
Yeah.
So, you used to stay in those little mom and pop houses along the road. Everybody had 3 or 4 little cabins. Yeah,
Motels.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That, just like on Route 9, they had 2 or 3 places
Yes.
where there were
I
the.
think they're all gone.
They
I
are
can't
all
remember.
gone. They're,
I haven't been out around too much.
now they have all the Taj Mahals out on
Yeah.
Route 9 that cost
We
you
even sport a hotel.
a slight fortune to stay there. But so, when you visited the relatives, did they all have get-togethers, or did you go and visit each one individually?
Well, he'd come back up and visit with me a while, and he'd go back and, you know, his home and so forth and so on. He'd put in his appearance every once in a while to see everybody on my
Paid
my
his
side, and
regards.
then I would go down and see his people
Yeah.
too. He was near the Bridgewater. That's the biggest town, and we lived in little settlements going up from
Okay.
Bridgewater.
Country people. That,
But-
do so your relatives down here and your family, the other Nova Scotians, you maintained contact with any of them over the years?
I always did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
And,
well, I see you were writing a letter when I came in here.
well,
So.
I had it was just my 93-year-old cousin, and he just passed away.
Okay. And so you're doing
So I was
your
writing
regards
her.
to them, but you're doing it the old-fashioned way by writing rather than an
Well, I
email.
just- Well, I don't use that newfangled.
I don't blame you. I wish I didn't have to either. Newfangled ain't necessarily good sometimes. So, but it's nice to take the time and still the regard to.
But I used to write all the time, keep up with all my school, and you know, a lot of the school friends and there, but they all went away and left me
Oh,
behind.
that's not very good. So, well, you're doing real good. I got to tell you that. I am impressed. Let's talk about grandchildren. Do you have grandchildren?
Yes, I have quite a few of them. What is it? Are we up to 13 or so, did we say? Or is it more? Count them up on your
Wait a minute, we're doing the
fingers.
math. Hang on.
10. Gail 1. I have 4. That's 5. And Lawrence has 2 and 3 step-James. So 3 step.
10.
10.
Okay.
You have 10 grandchildren. Never mind great-grandchildren. Now that's going to be...
Well, we were going there next, so. But are they all relatively close? One of your daughters lives in Florida, you said, but where are the
Yes.
grandkids?
Well, they're scattered around. I was, and grandkids up from Maine to Alaska,
Okay.
and
And are you able to keep in touch with them? Do you see them periodically?
The Alaskan one is down here now, taking care of my mother-in-law and me too.
Oh,
She
nice.
came for a mother-in-law, and then I had to get into the picture.
You had to pick up some spare time. And,
She's back and forth.
well, but that's terrific that she not only is able to, but wants to. You know, it's a combination of the two. So that says something about the respect. So let's talk about great-grandchildren.
Well, I've got,
A bunch.
how many was they?
Tyler and all them are your great-grandchildren.
Yeah,
Wow. I have 9, so that's 9 you'd have. Scott has 2, so that's 11. And Lawrence has 1, 2, 3. So, 14?
Well, that's terrific to have that many to keep track of and to follow what's going on in their lives and to stay in touch. So,
and I've got 3 great
oh,
grandchildren.
you're killing me.
Little ones.
There's no end to it. So do you get to see them? You get to hold the babies?
Yeah, well, I have.
They had a party.
My birthday.
Oh
yeah,
yes,
big-
yeah, the big bash.
Yeah.
And did Al Roker announce your name on TV? Doesn't he do that for when people turn 100?
Smuckers? Yeah, we sent it in, but they didn't do it.
They didn't do it.
They didn't do it.
Boycott Smuckers.
Yeah.
So, but you had a lovely party and everybody came then. So,
From
yeah.
all over.
And, so did you dance a
Upper
jig?
Canada, Nova Scotia, and
California,
Nice.
California.
Well,
and-
Florida.
How many of these does somebody get to go to in a lifetime? You know,
well,
to celebrate
that's
this.
what most
That's-
everybody said.
Absolutely.
I said,
I would have come.
everybody that came, I think they said it was the first time they ever went to
Yeah.
100.
Yeah. That. Well, I do believe this is the first time I've had the pleasure of chatting with a 100-year-old lady, and although Aunt Jane is getting close, that she's 96, I believe now, Jane Harvey, and so that and
She
she's.
should have been on a float.
Yeah, I don't know why she was. They may have asked her, and she may have declined. I don't know.
There was 296, and Charlie Fay
Yeah.
was 98,
Yeah.
and I was 100.
Yeah. Well, so far I've interviewed Charlie Fay and Bunny Perrin, who was on the
Oh,
float,
yeah.
and now you. So I'm closing in on everybody, and, because you're all such fascinating people, and you've had such worthwhile lives and interesting experiences.
Well, Bunny, I mean, I knew she must be related to the, what was it?
Fire chief.
Yes,
Fire
Perrin.
chief.
Yeah, Chief Perrin.
Yeah.
And yes, and the Smith family, Paul Smith, he was in construction business, and I was in school with his sons, and so that yeah, she's a delightful person too. She's just a funny girl and having a good time, and so what was your impression of the parade?
Oh, I think what I saw of it was very nice, and I was surprised to see the bagpipe people going up and past us.
Yeah.
We were waiting to
Yeah, going the other way.
go there and to get started.
Yeah.
They were going up and get placed up where they belong behind us, and so I was surprised to see the bagpipers, even though I read that they were going to be, and so forth, and nice bands. They said the bands were lovely.
Oh, absolutely. I was
Active.
amazed at how much music they had in the parade. It was really terrific. And of
Yes,
course,
everybody said.
The,
My daughter here has a farm stand up in there, and they up in North Grafton, and people come in and say what a wonderful parade they put on.
yeah. No, it's
It was just
absolutely.
wonderful.
And when they ended it with the UMass band coming
Yes.
by 450 band members, that was impressive.
Impressive.
Absolutely. Not quite as impressive as your float. but it was impressive. So,
Well,
that,
I think that.
but you at least got to see all the people in the parade,
Yeah.
which along the
Yeah.
sides of the streets, and
Oh, yes.
and there were a
Yes,
ton
they
of
were-
them.
They
But,
were there. My granddaughter told me that a couple of her friends saw me down around the high school area
Mhm.
where they live, and they were calling to me, but you couldn't hear.
Oh, there
them.
was so much noise. Yeah, I was down in that area too, and I was calling out to everybody and harassing them as they went by, but they couldn't hear me. So it probably just as well. So at that point, so what's your favorite color?
My favorite color, my goodness. I guess blues and blue. I think I wear a lot of blue.
Mm-hmm. Goes with your eyes.
Yeah.
Sets off
Goes
your
with
eyes
my
nicely. So that at that point. So, what about the weather in Westborough over the years? Do you think the weather is changing? Do you think the winters were longer and harder than what we're getting now? The ice came in earlier?
Well, it was a silly summer we had.
It's okay. I've heard several descriptions. I'm not sure silly was one of the ones that.
Well,
But that works.
August wasn't an ordinary month like August. It's hot.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I said, here we had a foggy morning. I said, we're even getting the August fog in September.
Yes.
And here we're
Getting summer.
getting August weather
Summer's
here at the
back.
end of September.
Yeah.
So
The,
what else could you call it but silly?
Well, I drove down in the fog. It was foggy almost
Yeah.
all the way down
Well,
in Maine till I got to the border.
That's when we
But,
came back from Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
My husband said I'd rather drive in the dark, and we'd drive right through.
Oh, okay.
And we came home here around 10:30
Wow.
or so.
That was a long trip.
It's a long trip, but he said I'd rather drive in the dark
Yeah.
and in the fog in the morning.
And there weren't any McDonald's to stop at along the way.
No.
At that
Used
point.
to pack their lunches.
Oh,
We would
Yeah.
eat on the way.
yeah. That,
Love to
Mon-
eat.
money was a precious commodity, so that.
Ask them how much they went out to eat.
Oh, well, we did. I have talked with some of the others, so that. Do you have any memories of going out to eat at the restaurants in town?
We did. We went out when we got together like anniversary. I had a friend in Auburn that had the same anniversary
Okay.
we did, and we always try to either go Auburn way or they come
Okay.
down this way, and we would pick a restaurant and go out to eat, but that never impressed me too much.
It wasn't as good as your own cooking.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I mean, I just shouldn't stay home.
Yeah, and some people do. I mean, the hustle and bustle of going out, plus the
there's
price.
some people
that,
can't wait to go out to a restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know there were several, like the Eli Whitney House that was well known in town here back then, and
We used to go there.
where
We-
Bertucci's is, and then Thompson's Steakhouse, which on the other side of Route
Yes,
9
that's
up
another
there.
place.
And that I don't, probably not that far back, the old Fox Run, Walter Katunas had down on the
Fox Lounge.
Fox Lounge, not Fox Run.
Open
Yes.
steak sandwich,
Oh.
$1.25.
Yeah.
When I got married, $1.25.
Oh, I hope they bring it back. But
That
that
was
was,
good
the car
choice.
dealer is there now.
Yeah.
Because we used to, back when the JCs were very popular in the early 70s, Walter let us clean out the basement, and we used to call it the Foxhole under the Fox Restaurant Lounge. And we would have our meetings down there and do some fundraisers and so forth. So that, but another farm, the Katunas farm, that's gone. That was along Route 9. I was trying to think of the name of the dairy farm that was out where Mass Electric is on the corner, and I can't remember the name of that.
Out on Route 9?
Yeah, that a big barn that sat there before you get to 495.
See, I didn't know, because I didn't go off the farm.
Yeah,
We never left.
you weren't allowed to go that far.
We never went that far.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, so, but there's so many of the farms, the Ward Farm and you know, the apple orchard
My
up on
understanding that
Gilmore's.
Westborough was a big dairy producer. They used
Yes.
to take the milk by
Train.
train into Boston.
Into Boston.
Yeah, because Westborough was such a
Yeah. You
producer of milk.
you read in some of the historical accounts that they referred to Westborough as the milk capital of the world, and for the amount of dairy farms. And I don't have a number on that when you stop to think about how many there were. And the same with apple orchards. And now it's been long enough that you start to forget, because Dodd and Tyler's development was all an apple.
Yeah, McTaggart's.
McTaggart's apple orchard, very good. And before he got into the bus company, and then the guy where the Matthews bought on Fisher Street, there was an apple orchard down there.
Kyle Henry's.
Kyle Henry. Yeah, see, you're good. I'm not going to play trivia with you. You'll beat me. But anyhow, well, I think we're winding down here, and I want to say that I have enjoyed talking to you and sharing your memories of what Westborough was like, and raising your family here and surviving all of these wonderful years. I presume that you're kind of fond of Westborough at this point.
Oh, yes. Yes, Westborough is a nice little place. Big place.
Nice big place now.
Yeah.
Good correction.
Little place
It
compared
has
to what it is
it
now.
has changed, but you've
Yeah.
preserved your little corner here,
Yeah.
and you still have that to cling on to as the world swirls around and changes beyond you. But I thank you very much for spending the time with us,
Well,
and I'm sure that the viewers will enjoy hearing your conversation about your life in Westborough.
Well, we'll see.
Oh, you'll hear. Don't worry. They'll get a hold of you. So.